Hello, and welcome to Real Person Reviews. I'm Sam, and I'm a real person, and today I want to talk to you about Metroid Zero Mission. So, Metroid Zero Mission is a game on the Game Boy Advance, and it's a remake of the original Metroid, which came out on the NES. And just so I can kind of clear this up really quick, I would call it a remake, not a reboot, because it didn't continue the series. It's not an HD remake because they changed a bunch of things in it as well. So it's kind of like a new game, even though it is very much based on a lot of the stuff from Metroid, obviously. So I kind of want to clear a little bit of that up. So I would call it a remake, not a reboot. So do with that information what you will. That's just how I use the terms. I mean, it's basically it plays like a Metroid game would, like you would expect if you've played Metroid, Metroid 2, Super Metroid, or Metroid Fusion. You can kind of get where this one is going to go. Like most Metroid games, you run around on this big map, and you explore. You are on an alien planet, and as far as I can tell, because I didn't pay attention to the very little amount of story they did give you, is that basically you're trying to destroy the mother brain on the planet. That's your goal. So you go in search of the mother brain on the planet. You just do that. So you're on this planet alone, which has some pretty good atmosphere on it, I might add. And it's you explore. You're fighting. It's a hostile environment. There are lots of aliens there, and they don't really want you there. So most of them are going to attack you. You should fight back. You can run, jump, and shoot. And as you go through the game, you'll get power-ups to let you do more things. You can get some new weapons. You can expand your ammunition for those weapons. And you can get a lot of items that will give you upgrades, allowing you to traverse more and more of the map, and it'll help you progress. And that's, the adventure, the exploration, and the challenge are the things that Metroid games are really all about. And it's hard to say much else other than there's a lot of that, and it's done very well, and that it's very fun. Again, if you've played any of the other Metroid games, the 2D Metroid games, or perhaps you've played something like the other Metroidvania type games, you get the idea. Although this is much more Metroid than Vania, but and for those of you who are wondering or have played other Metroid games, I feel like this is a combination really of three Metroid games specifically. Obviously, it's very much the first Metroid, because it's based on that, the layouts of a lot of the places, the locations you'll go to, the items you get, the bosses you'll fight. They're all, taken from Metroid, so that makes sense, as well as the music, although there is the graphics and the music have been changed for this version, obviously, because it's on Game Boy Advance and they can do more things. So it's very much like the first Metroid in those respects. And then it's a lot like Super Metroid, it is like Super Metroid, a lot. Metroid Fusion. It's a lot like Metroid Fusion as well. Basically, mostly like a mixture between Metroid and Metroid Fusion, because in Metroid Fusion, which was also on the Game Boy Advance, it uses the same engine, so the graphics look very similar, the control is very similar, and a lot of the little, a lot of the assets have been taken right from Metroid Fusion and put into this one. So a lot of it is like that, although artistically I think it's a little better because it's more colorful, more like the original one was. And there is some Super Metroid in there, but there's just like bits and pieces of Super Metroid. Since that really kind of established the formula anyway that Fusion built off of, it's kind of like Super Metroid. There's like little things like the ship, and there's some little Chozo statue things, and there's just bits and pieces here and there that are clearly from Super Metroid. So basically it's like those games mixed all into one beautiful package of an amazing game. Perhaps the most fun I've had with a Metroid game, because I've played Metroid, Metroid 2, I played some of Super Metroid, and I played Metroid Fusion. I didn't beat any of those other ones though. They're pretty hard. I think there are some changes I should probably bring up, though. Besides, obviously the graphics and the sound have been changed. The songs and sounds and everything have been updated, and the graphics have been updated. Although I still think it's very colorful with the graphics. I still think it looks pretty good and has a good atmosphere, especially with the new music. The tones are pretty cool and work with the atmosphere, I think. And the difference is, I guess, if you're coming from the first Metroid, are things like, the control, I think, is the biggest one. Where in the original Metroid, and even in like Super Metroid and stuff, but like in the original Metroid, you are kind of floatier. And in here, it's very tight, it's very fast, so you can do a lot more fast-paced action. And you still have some momentum stuff you have to build up in here, but it's not so much. It's not as much of that, I guess, is what I'm saying. It's faster, and you're much more mobile. You're not as floaty. You do still kind of have a flippy jump thing you have to get used to doing normal jumps, or if you're jumping in a direction, you do like a flippy jump. You kind of have to gauge those a bit still. But it's really tight, and I think it's really easy to get into. It just might be really strange if you've coming off of the first Metroid. Also, if coming off of the first Metroid, a thing that kind of goes along with that is that you're a larger sprite on the screen now. So, you can see less of what's happening on the screen. Which can be difficult, especially with the fact that you do move faster. It can be difficult to kind of adjust to that. But I think the reason is partly because, it's a smaller screen to begin with on the Game Boy Advance, and also I think they've kind of adjusted for that, the sizes of enemies, and adjusted the difficulty of the game in general. And that's another thing was, okay, so like the first Metroid had password system, so that's how you'd save, is you would die, and then you would get a password, and it would bring you back to a checkpoint with all the stuff that you have. So you never really lose anything except for, your forward progress moving through the maps. And in here, in Zero Mission, they have save stations, and map stations and stuff like that, but they have save stations, and you, because you can save, the thing is that you have to go to the save stations and save in order for your progress to be saved. And if you, go off and you explore really far and then die, all that progress you made, since your last save will be gone, you'll have to do it again. And that can be very frustrating. And in the original Metroid, it would have saved all your stuff anyways, but in here, it doesn't, and because of that, and the use of save stations and how those work, they've kind of adjusted the difficulty, so enemies don't seem to do as much damage. You seem to get more health from them when you do kill enemies, so it's a little bit easier to survive and to make it work. That doesn't mean that the game is really that much easier, though, or necessarily. I would say it is easier for the controls and all that stuff, too, mixed together, but the thing is, if you're going to be dying and losing all of your progress and the items that you got and all of that stuff, like when you die, it should be harder for you to die. But if you're, you're just running around and not careful and just, dicking off, you're still going to die. The enemies still do a good amount of damage, and it's not like you can just, fuck around and be like, I'm invincible now, I'll never die. No, you'll still die. You have to be careful. So I think it's a very good balance. And probably the best addition, really the only thing that I really, really would have loved, and would have made the very first Metroid really fun for me, is the fact that there's a map. There is a map in this game, and I can't stress enough how important that is. Metroid did not have a map. Metroid 2 did not have a map. So it was really hard to tell where the fuck you were. And it's easier to tell where you're going in this one anyway because of the updated graphics and the way that different areas actually look different and you can tell what's going on. In the original Metroid, it was really hard to tell where you were spatially. You weren't moving around like in Zelda or something, screen for screen, to even remember spatially, even though they're repeating a lot of the same textures and colors for these things. But the thing is, it was very long vertical and very long horizontal hallways. It made it really awkward and hard to tell where you were. And it was unnecessarily confusing, and because there was no map, I've always felt that the original Metroid was just... If it just had a map, I would have probably really, really liked it. But that's one thing I also have to mention, too, is that Metroid Zero Mission, on top of being a great game, beautifully, you know, remaking the first Metroid in a much tighter, more polished, just beautiful way. It also has, as an extra on here, the original Metroid. So I know there's a Game Boy Advance game from the classic NES series of Game Boy Advance games that has the original Metroid on it. But you might as well just get Zero Mission because it has both of these games on it. And the fact that it can fit so much on there is just awesome. And then you can play the original too if you'd rather, you know, check out where this came from. And if you just happen to like that one, you know, I think it's a really good pack for anyone who's interested. Even if you're just interested in one of them and not necessarily the other, I feel like Zero Mission is the one to get because you get both. And you might want to play the other one after you play the one you wanted to. So there's that. There's also a pretty interesting section here because they actually, and it's probably a little bit of a spoiler, but they add in stuff past what would be the end of the original Metroid stuff. So, like, there's an extra section you can go to. And it's actually pretty hard. It's a part where they actually take you out of your power suit, and you have to go through and you have to go through without your suit, and basically it's about sneaking around because you have a pistol that can stun enemies, but it has to charge up to stun them. So it takes a few seconds for that to charge itself up, and you can only stun one enemy at a time with that. And the thing is, you're kind of sneaking around trying not to get caught because these enemies do shitloads of damage, and they will crawl under, you know, little areas. They'll crawl under stuff to get to you. They will jump up and climb walls to get to you, so you can't just jump away. And they'll even follow you onto the next screen. So it's like it's very frightening. And because they do tons of damage when they hit you, and you can only stun one at a time, unless you're only being chased by one or something. You know, a lot of times it's scary. And there are sections where you have to actually maneuver around them and run past them. Like, you have to get spotted and run past them. So it's making you work with these parts, these things of like, okay, after I've been really strong and a badass killing everything, now there's sections where you have to, you know, be slow and careful, mixed with parts where you have to be fast and precise. And it's really interesting and a lot of fun, and they give you a pretty good reward for getting through there. And my complaint about this section, though, this is like the last leg of the game because they put this in at the end as a tacked on extra bit. And they give you some power-ups from that. You actually get 3 power-ups from there for doing this stuff. And the problem is that right around here is also near the end of the game. So I didn't know where the final boss was, and I kind of stumbled into the final boss room. Not knowing it was the last boss, I beat it. And then it had, like, me going through this evacuation section. Like, hey, I gotta get out because it's gonna auto-destruct this area. And I flew a ship out. And then it was like, oh, there's credits. And I was like, oh, shit, I guess I beat the game. And I feel like they should have had a much better indicator of this is, like, the last thing you're gonna go into. This is the last boss room. You know, because I would have gone back and, like, looked for other stuff. Now that I had my new power-ups, I didn't really get to use them that much to go look for all the secret stuff that I missed. And that bothered me, that they didn't really telegraph that. And after I beat the game, there wasn't much incentive to go back and get the stuff, because what do I care? I was strong enough and good enough to beat the game the way it was, so whatever. But overall, I guess I can't really complain much about this game because I think it did things really well. And it's great design. Possibly even better design than Super Metroid, but I'll have to play more of Super Metroid and get back to you guys on that one, so... Metroid Zero Mission. You see I paid, see that shows up on there, but... It's a weird symbol on my camera. I don't know what it means. But, yeah. It's paid. Shit. Did you even see it? Can you see it? Yeah, $30. Paid $30 for this. And actually, it was worth it. For getting Metroid Zero Mission, which is designed very beautifully, so much like polish and attention to detail, and it's super fun. It's really tight. The controls are good. I like the art. The music is cool, and the atmosphere, the exploration. It does tell you, like, there are some points where it kind of like points out a thing on your map where to go, but it doesn't tell you, it doesn't give you any map directions. It doesn't tell you have to go there. It doesn't tell you what you're going to get there or how you're supposed to, what you're supposed to do when you get there or anything. So it's kind of neat that, like, okay, that's where I should be going next, and you can kind of travel around wherever you want to. That's the thing, too. It's not very intrusive. It doesn't really hold your hand. It's just kind of giving you a little tip there, and I think it works well of guiding you without forcing you into anything or spoiling anything for you. So, Metroid Zero Mission. Basically, like I said before, if you've played Metroid 2, Super Metroid, or Metroid Fusion, and you liked those, you'll probably like this because it's awesome. And this is probably one of the best Game Boy Advance games I've ever played. Even if it is a remake, it's very, very good. Plus, it has the original on it too, so it's a great deal for getting both of those games. And it's so fun. And this is one of the few games where I played it and then it ended, and I was sad that it was over, that there wasn't more things for me to do here. But it's just great. I mean, I can't recommend this enough. Definitely pick it up if you can find it and you have a Game Boy Advance, because it's fucking awesome. And I don't know. I mean, I guess for in the comments, what's your favorite Metroid game? I guess you can leave that in the comments. And other stuff. What I should review next. So, like I say, I have access right now. I have access to, obviously with this, the original Metroid. I do have access to Super Metroid, which I'm planning on playing next, so probably see a review of that come up sometime relatively soon, maybe. So I want to play Super Metroid, and I could maybe borrow Metroid 2 at some point, but we'll see. We'll see. I did have it, and I let my brother borrow it, and he's been playing it some. So I can play those. I don't have the Prime games anymore, and Other M didn't work in my Wii. So we're kind of limited on what we can do here. I did sell Fusion. Sorry. If I could find it for cheap, I might get it back and try it again, but I found it annoying, so I stopped. But, if you guys are interested in other stuff you want me to review, put that in the comments and stuff, too. And, something I didn't mention at the beginning of the video, I probably should have by now, but, I'm mentioning it now. You can go into the description and find a link to the written review of this game, which might take less time to look at that, on the Gravel Pit. You can also just go to the gravelpit.net and check out reviews there, because I'm going to be posting them at the same time now, so that's exciting and cool and that stuff. So check it out. Okay, that's all I got to ramble on at the end of here, so thanks for watching, and I'm a real person.